Hey folks, welcome to 6 Minutes of Witchcraft with me, Laura Tempest Zakroff. I'm going to set my little alarm right here. And this week, we're going to talk about mistakes. In a future episode, I'm going to talk about manifesting, which was something that everybody seemed really excited about when I posted a poll on my author page on Facebook. But I think before we can talk about manifesting, we need to talk about mistakes, the fallout, what we learned from them. Because everyone makes mistakes. In the way that the internet functions nowadays, there's this veneer to everything that everybody is perfect, right? You have to have this perfect image, you have to say all the right things, all of this stuff, when the reality is we're all screwing things up every moment. Like, you do a lot of good things and you're going to screw up at some point. You're going to say something that's going to offend somebody. And I look at a lot of what's going on, especially in the younger generations on Tumblr and Twitter, and they're expressing so much anxiety about their past, their personal lives. And I'm like, oh, is it just that the state of the world is so in flux right now with the environment, with politics, with everything that's going on with human rights? Or I thought about it, and this is exactly what I did in my teens and my 20s. And the difference is that I wasn't getting on the internet until the late 90s. And the internet back then is not the same as it is now. A few words on an IRC board, a GeoCities page, or something that doesn't even exist anymore. Not every moment was recorded in the way it is now with Facebook and Instagram. And so on one hand, you have these amazing images that people are setting up on Instagram, posting on Tumblr. And then you have people who are calling each other out versus calling them in about, you said this word, you used that wrong word there, you're canceled. And one thing I've noticed over time is that people have a short-term memory when it comes to bad things. But the other thing is, the reality is that people make mistakes, and we all have an opportunity to grow. So you're like, well, I thought this was going to be about, casting a spell wrong. You never really technically cast a spell wrong. You just probably need to be a little bit more specific or less specific about it. But that's the thing you learn. That's the thing about mistakes, is that you learn, oh, perhaps I should use this method instead, or I was too specific or not specific enough. Oh, this had this effect that I didn't foresee that happening. That's the great thing about living and walking this path. And we learn from experimentation. We learn from living the path. And you're not going to do it perfect. That means if you get initiated into a group, you might forget the words, or your candle's not going to light right. It's not the end of the world, because everybody else has done it. I know it feels more like you're in a chamber where everything is saying, you're doing it wrong, and somehow you're a failure. No, you're succeeding. You are living life right now. You're here. And it's okay. So the main thing about making mistakes is learning from them. So it also means that you should have that lens for other people. I'm not saying that you should tolerate bigotry and racism and etc. But especially when it comes to the generational gap, which I've blogged about, if I use a word that in another 6 months is going to change its meaning, if you go back and say, oh, she's a horrible person because she used that word, like, well, first, did you understand the context? What was my intent in using that word? What is my generational experience? What is my background? Always amused when someone says, you can't use that word. I'm like, did you ask me about my background and how I'm associated with that word before you condemn me for using it? Probably not. So taking that as a mirror to other people is following the intent of what's going on there. Because being so harsh on other people means that we're being equally harsh on ourselves, which is not a productive use of energy. So I'm not saying, go around, screw up as much as possible. As I talked about last week with the threefold law, you should be considering what are the positive and negative possible outcomes, right? The reactions to whatever you do, but what is your next step past that? Where are you going to be going with that decision as you solve a problem and move forward? So you get better at starting to calculate and foresee what can go wrong, what can go right, what are the unintended and intended consequences and responsibilities of your actions. but you will never stop making mistakes, right? It's just not a thing. No one becomes perfect. No one becomes a supreme, and just stop screwing up on things, because that's how it is. We are in human bodies, wandering around doing this stuff, and that doesn't mean we are omnipotent, right? Omniscient, all of the ohms in what we're doing, because we still are caught up with the dramas, the necessities of making sure you're properly hydrated and making sure you're not hangry because you haven't eaten, making sure that you're not trying to have a serious discussion about a really touchy subject during Mercury retrograde. All of these things are part of the process of learning. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. And what I really hope that a lot of people, especially young people, embrace is letting go of that anxiety of how you might be appearing to others. Because one, if you can be kinder to yourself, then it's so much easier to be kinder to other people and to understand how they may react in their own past and practices, to use empathy, to have logical understanding as well as metaphysical insight into a situation. So the alarm didn't go off, but we're right there just after 6 minutes. So I hope you found this useful. If you have any feedback or comments, you can put them below. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and have an awesome day. Bye.